Okay, so Prop 20 is what I'm billing as a quote-unquote tough-on-crime bill, and I've got notes here, just amongst the major provisions of the proposition, it creates two new crimes. One's called serial theft, not like breakfast cereal, but like when you have theft a lot in a row, and then organized retail theft, which I believe is like when a group of people get together to steal from retail outlets. It upgrades some crimes from misdemeanors currently to felonies. I believe that was some types of domestic violence and some types of assault, I believe. I'll have to double check that. On the probation side, it gives creates kind of a 3-strike situation where once somebody has violated the restrictions of their probation 3 times, it requires the probation officer to ask the judge to make changes. It makes parole more difficult for people. So parole is when you get out of prison early. It prevents people that have committed certain crimes from even participating in the parole system at all. So basically it means no parole for them. And that's some types of assault and some types of domestic violence. It makes parole hearings. So right now, if you have a parole hearing and you're unsuccessful in it, you have to wait a year till another parole hearing. And this one would make that period now mandatory 2 years. So it'd lengthen the time in between when you can be eligible for parole. And then on another side, it requires DNA samples to be taken from people who have been convicted of certain misdemeanors now. Primarily, right now, that's usually from felonies. You get your DNA taken if you're convicted of a felony. This would add some misdemeanors like shoplifting, forging checks, and some types of domestic violence. So it's kind of a weird hodgepodge of stuff.
Jaywalking.
I mean, that's probably the next one. Amy brought up a point about that this screams trying to undo Prop 47, and I would say that's probably accurate. As of the last filing deadline, about $3.5 million were contributed to support this, and it was kind of interesting. It was primarily, this is probably not the interesting part, primarily police-related groups, so sheriffs, sheriffs and police officer associations, and some grocery stores like Albertsons and a grocery store kind of trade group, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And over on the opposed side, about $6.3 million was collected. A big chunk from Patty Quinlan, which is the spouse of Reed Hastings, the Netflix guy. Stacy Schusterman, who's a philanthropist. The ACLU, some different social justice type foundations, and a group called the Committee for California. So it was interesting that, again, this is kind of I would classify this as a tough on crime bill. And I think that I'm going to be voting no on this, because I think that this feels more punitive in nature to me. It feels more punishment based than trying to make the system more rehabilitative. And I think that that's usually the wrong way to go. I think you should be putting your resources into rehabilitation rather than punishment. So that's it. That's all I got.
Interesting. What was the reasoning behind doing that? Behind making those changes?
The reasoning, meaning the argument for it?
Exactly.
Oh, the argument for it was basically that these people are horrible people, and why would we want to give them any benefits, right?
I see. Okay.
The first line of the argument in favor of is, quote, "He slashed at me with a knife and tried to kill me." That was from, according to Tara Newell, who survived a knife attack by the sociopath Dirty John.
Mm-hmm.
It was brutal and terrifying, but in California, his attack wasn't a violent crime. I mean, when you attack somebody with a knife, I'm pretty sure that's a violent crime. I could be wrong, but apparently. So basically, the arguments for it are that it's tough on crime.
Mhm.
I mean, for lack of, I mean, this is not verbatim, right? But and then the opposition arguments are kind of like, well, this is just, keeping more people in prison to spend more money on prison, and it doesn't really do anything for justice. So
Sure.
Well, and
Yep.
I was going to say reading between the lines, the reason that this was introduced as a proposition is because there's a lot of money in incarcerating people.
Mhm.
And apparently in preventing grocery store shoplifting, I guess.
Well,
yeah,
so
that's
they have a loss prevention. I'm sure they know have an idea of how much money they lose every year in
Absolutely.
loss, right? So if spending a certain amount of that on tougher punishment or whatever they feel is going to reduce that loss, it's probably a pretty sound business position to take.
but
Although
they're already allowed to extort people, right?
who?
Retail stores.
Extort people?
Absolutely. Shoplifters. So my brother, when he was a teenager, I was called to go pick him up at Sears. He had shoplifted something. My mom received a bill for that. Not the item which they had recovered.
Mhm.
She was billed for him just shoplifting, and it was like $500.
Oh, really?
And no, they billed my mom, and they can again, they can bill you if you're an adult and you shoplift. They can send you, what they feel like they're out by having to, I don't know, by catching you stealing. They had to pay loss prevention people, and if there weren't people there stealing, they wouldn't have to pay the.
Right.
So I mean, those stores, I don't feel all that bad for them.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not saying people should be stealing, but they're already legally allowed to extort people for money. For that, so I don't know.
Sure.
Yeah.
What?
But that was just sort of an aside. It was just like, I don't think many people even know that, because most people don't get caught shoplifting.
But what I
You know
was
what I mean? Like, it's not a common experience that in your life you can look back and go, oh yeah, and then the store, and then they threatened to sue me, and then they,
Right.
And Jason, if you need any other reason to vote no on this, one of the campaign contributions in the amount of $305,000
Uh-huh.
is from the Devin Nunes.
Oh, you dropped out there. Oh, wow, that was weird. It was from Devin Nunes. I'm sorry,
Yep.
you guys dropped out there for a second.
Yep, Devin Nunes.
Well, that's it. That's enough. Anything that Devin Nunes is for, I'm against. So fuck that guy and his cow that he rode in on.
I don't know. I heard one time that he likes to eat steak, and I can't be against everything he likes. But
No, the point I was going to make about the companies taking that position, or the grocery stores taking that position, was that it seems like that's a sound business perspective to take, right? Like, oh, if X costs X much or X costs X much, if this costs X much, and so it's going to cost some amount less than that to do this thing to stop it, then let's do that and we save money. Except like that's based on a fundamental flaw, which is that making this law that increases punishment is going
and takes your DNA.
right, is going to somehow reduce crime. I think is fundamentally unsound. Like, it's just those two things. There's plenty of evidence that just simply increasing the punishment for something does little to affect crime, because it's just not something that people factor in large part when they're committing a crime, right? Like, this has been studied. People aren't going, well, should I steal this thing? I don't know. Is it 2 years or is it 5 years? It was 2 years. If it was 2 years, I'm going to steal it. But now it's 5 years, and fuck that. I'm not going to do it. Like, that's just not. It's not a factor. There are so many other things in play here. So I think it's stupid logic. So whatever. It's interesting.
Oh, and quick note too. So out of the $3.5 million that support this, $2 million was contributed by the California Correctional Officers Association. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
so those are the people that take care of the people in prison. So I guess they want more people in prison to take care of. So,
yeah. Well, they definitely.
I think there's plenty of people in prison right now.
Yeah. Another topic for another time is the
shortage, so.
prison industrial complex. That's a fun one.